We're going to start from Perek Ches Pasuk Hey. This is initiating the Leviim to replace the firstborn, the Bechorim. וידבר השם אל משה לאמור, קח את הלוויים בתוך בני ישראל והתרת אותם. You should take the Leviim from the midst of the Bnei Yisrael and you should purify them. So here Rashi says something which he says in a number of places throughout the Torah. What's the meaning of kach? Take. When you take an inanimate object or an unintelligible person or creature, you can use the word take. But if you're talking about a person who has intelligence and discretion, you don't take him. It's only if he's agreeable to come. He comes. Kach indicates it's like taking him where he doesn't have much say in the matter. Now, where did we have in the past kach? We find that when Hashem created Adam, it says he took him and he put him in the Garden of Eden. So Rashi over there says, what does it mean by Yikach? He persuaded him to come into existence because he explained to him the opportunity he has, what it means to be a functional human being. So the word kach means persuasion. Over here, Rashi is kachas Leviim, kochim b'dvorim. Take them with words, mean persuade them. And what is the persuasion? Ashreichem, you people are fortunate. Shetisku lios shamoshel lamokim. You've merited to be the ones who are the officiants for Hashem. That's the persuasion. Now the question is, why when a person is persuaded, why is the correct term is kach? Why is that a correct term? So we explained in the past, what is choice? Choice is only a choice if you see there's an alternative. And despite the alternative, you make a choice. Which one to you is more advantageous? Which one would you prefer to do? What about if a person doesn't see an alternative? He only sees one way. There's no other way. If that's the case, he has no choice. Persuasion means that you present it in a way which is so convincing that the alternative has no relevance. It's not even a consideration. The alternative is not even a consideration. As a result of that, basically you've taken him. Because the persuasion caused that he no longer has choice because he realizes through the persuasion that the alternative has no value and is not an alternative to what you're presenting. We find that Moshe Rabbeinu says to Klal Yisrael in Dvorim, I present before you life and death, blessing and curse. Uvacharta b'chayim. Encouraging you to choose life. I mean, if a question is life and death, do you have to encourage a person to choose life over death? A person is going to the gallows, or he's going to be admitted into a palace. Is that a choice? No question. The person has to be unstable to even consider the gallows over going into the palace. It's not an alternative. So if Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jews, I'm presenting you with broch and klolach, blessing and curse, ubacharta b'chayim, and you should choose life. What kind of choice was that? So if you look in the Midrash, the choice of life and death of life is not so simple. As they say in English, to achieve and succeed within the spiritual realm, it's a long road to hope. Everything seems to be positive, rosy, and beneficial, despite if you don't toe the line. It's like pushing a boulder up a mountain. But if you understand the value that if you reach the summit with that boulder, you open vistas which is not to be imagined. That's why physical existence is not so simple. Moshe Rabbeinu is saying the reality. I'm presenting for you blessing, curse. Ubecharta b'chaim. Choose life. The way it's perceived, following the spiritual path is not an easy life. But ultimately, as it says in the Midrash, what is life? Life is a 3-day trek. If you compare 70 days to eternity, what is 70 years? 70 years is a blink of an eye compared to eternity. So therefore, it's worthwhile to persevere and make sacrifices for the sake of the ultimate, because whatever investment of time you're having and whatever difficulties you have, the payoff is unlimited. As a result of that, but if a person is short-sighted and you don't appreciate that, and it's for the moment is difficult, unless you truly appreciate it and you internalize it to see its value. So here, kachas Leviim, persuade them. What's the persuasion? You're fortunate that you merited to be the officiants of Hashem. All the others are all disqualified. Of course, they participate in Chet Egel, but what's the cost factor? They've given up. They have no share in the land. The Leviim, because they're the officiants of Hashem, they have no share in the land. I mean, the whole concept of wealth is what? Is an empowerment. We find that the term used that a man is put on his feet is financially. He's put on his feet. That gives a person that sense of confidence. The Leviim, with their 48 cities of Leviim, Levites, but it's not much to talk about compared to what everybody else received. But you realize Yishamoshel Namokum, you're God's officiants. If you appreciate what that means, then you understand there's no alternative. That's persuasion. There's something we said from the Dubna Magid. He goes on the question. The Jews were told, Avraham Avinu was told that his children are going to be strangers in the land which is not theirs. They'll be enslaved, they'll be afflicted, and they're going to go out with great wealth. And the nation that enslaves them will be judged. So we see it's explicit in the Torah. What was the Rechush Gadol? What was the great wealth? Each Jew, man and woman, they borrowed from their neighbors their personal effects. And they literally depleted all the wealth out of Egypt. They stripped them of all their wealth. That's Akach Yetzer Rechush Gadol. Yet Abayi says in the Midrash that Rechush Gadol is Kabbalas Torah. That's the ultimate bounty. When you believe Egypt, you can have the ultimate bounty. That's Rechush Gadol. So they ask, how could you say it's Sinai, it's the Torah, where it's explicit in Torah? They were asked to borrow the gold and silver from the neighbors because that's the payout. So how could the Medrash say, Abai say that it's Kabbalas Torah, it's receiving Torah at Sinai? So he explains the Dubna Magid, as he explains everything with a mashal, with an allegory. There was this young man, you remember it when I say it, he needed a summer job. So his father calls up his friend. He needed a farmhand. He worked on a farm from dusk to dawn for 3 months. And after 3 months, and the son was illiterate, couldn't read. And the employer, the one who owned the farm, writes him a check for $5,000, which is a tremendous amount of money. It was beyond what the value of his work was. And the young man looks at the piece of paper with some scribble on it, and he's like shocked. Here I work from dawn to dusk, and you give me a piece of paper with some scribble on it. So he comes home to his father, and he shows to his father. He says, "Look what he's given me. This is your friend. He abused me for 3 months, then he gives me a piece of paper with scribble on it." So the father looks at it and he smiles, and he understands the son doesn't understand the value of that piece of paper. It was a check, which for immediate deposit. So he calls up his friends and says, "Do me a favor. My son is illiterate. He doesn't appreciate what you gave him. Take a few silver coins in a bag and let them jingle. he'll be the happiest person in the world. And that's what he did. But if he would have been literate and he could have read, he would have understood the value of that piece of paper. When the Jews left Egypt, it talked to them about Torah, spirituality. They were so far removed from that. It's like that illiterate young man. They wouldn't appreciate that this is a compensation, that ultimately this was the process to reach the summit, the pinnacle of their spirituality. They couldn't appreciate it. Therefore, in the interim, when we leave, what does Hashem say? Gold, silver, 10 pack animals, every Jew minimally took out, laden with the wealth of Egypt. But 49 days later, 50th day, when they came to realization that the material has no value unto itself, and the ultimate value is their relationship to Hashem, and what's going to bind us to that is the Torah, then they understood the ultimate Rechush Gadol, the grand prize, is the Torah itself. So I'm saying over here, the Leviim, they didn't participate in the Chet Egel. What is that, Shreichem? You're fortunate that you merited to be the efficiency of Hashem. Today you say that to somebody says, thank you, but no thank you. That's what they would tell you. But the Leviim, because they never participated in the Chet Egel, and in Egypt they were never in the enslavement. Therefore, they could appreciate this. Fortunate you're the efficiency of Hashem. That's the persuasion. With anybody else of the tribes, it wouldn't have resonated. With them, it resonated because they themselves didn't have all these handicaps and these blockages, which everybody else did have.
All right. So, are we saying that when
this is what you should do to them to purify them? Firstly, you have to sprinkle on them the water of the paraduma, meaning if they have any level of contamination of the dead, they're going to be purified. That virusar al kol besorim. You have to run a straight blade over all their flesh, meaning to remove all the hair from their bodies. The chibsu b'ktei mitoro, and they will immerse their clothing in the mikveh, and then they will be considered pure. Rashi, hazei lenichatos shel efar pora, through the water of the red heifer. They should tmei mesim meishem. If there were anybody, people were contaminated, dead, but we have uniformly, they all have to undergo this process. The virusar. Now, what's the whole idea of removing the hair? But they're coming to atone for the Bechorim who are participating in idolatry. It's considered the Zevach of Mesim, the sacrifice of the dead. And the leper is called a mes. So just as the Mitzvah, when he completes his stint in the impure state, he has to reinstate him, you have to remove all the hair to bring about the purification. Here also, they themselves representing the Bechorim, they have to undergo that initiation process to remove the hair, and only then do they become functional as officiants of Hashem.
Well, because the Bechorim were
idolatry is Zivchei Mesim, and Mitzorah is Choshev Kimes. So there's an equation between the Mitzorah and idolater. And so the purification of Mitzorah, you have to remove all the hair. So the purification of those who have relevance to idolatry, they have to remove all the hair.
Why didn't they just do that? Why didn't the Bechorim do that? And even though the Leviim were taking the place of the Bechorim, why not say that about? Why not have the Bechorim do that? That's who was committed idolatry. Why does Leviim have to do that?
Okay, we'll stop here in the Chumash, and we'll continue your question tomorrow. Okay.